It's a long story, but I think you're always looking for something, some activity that you really like doing and that you get to, and that just really satisfies you in some way, and something that you're not going to get bored of if you're doing it every single day. And I fell in love with animation, and then I fell in love with game design, and both from just the experience of just making it. And I've tried other things over the years, but those are the things that I kind of sort of gravitated towards, and I'm able to do them with and still enjoy the process of it. Even the bad parts of it I kind of enjoy. With everything I've made, I've never had a grant of any kind, and I've never had like external funding. Everything I've done is self-funded, and it's funded by doing jobs for people. In the most recent case, because my video game, people were buying my video game, so I used that to fund the game. There's no cases where I needed extra money. I always tried to do things, the good things I've done, unless, you know, I'm talking about my independent work. I've never depended on anybody for money for those projects. And maybe I could have, but they wouldn't be the same. Because I think to do anything really new, very, very few people are going to understand what you're doing. They'll understand it after it's finished, but they won't understand it before. So it's very hard to fund things that you're very passionate about if there's no precedent for them. And so that's my story. But the answer really is, like, how do you make money or how do you do it? It's really by adapting and by being sensitive to what's going on in the world, by being sensitive to your own talents and how they can fulfill demands in the world, and then trying to get those to match up. Now, it doesn't mean that you're doing you're just doing some sort of mainstream thing that you're just trying to satisfy the most popular thing. No.
Quiet desperation.
You have to find the match between like what's inside of you that you want to get out and what could be in demand by the world, even if they don't even know that they need it yet. But by I think just being sensitive to that and being willing to adapt over time, because things change very, very quickly, especially in the world of just the image, like what humans do with images. This is always evolving. And so being able to adapt to that, I think, helps. If you're in a situation where you're saying, I want to make money, but I'm just doing this thing in my style and it's not working, well, you have to just be willing to change. Though you can't expect the world to change around you. And so when you're willing to let go of any idea of what your style is supposed to be or what you really want to be popular in the world, and you're willing to take a risk and to just find this middle ground where you might create something new and contribute something new, that's usually how you can have a success, or how you can create a situation that you can be independent. We have the police here. You don't need to be super rich. There's problems with being too rich, and there's problems with being too broke. And what I always find is the ideal situation for making creative projects is to not have to worry about money for about 6 months to a year into the future. And when you don't have to worry about money for just this little period of time, and it's not very expensive, it's not impossible, then you can really have room to grow and to do whatever you want. So you can't force yourself to be creative, but you can create a situation where you're able to create comfortably. And so there's different ways to do it, but it's always possible, I think, to survive out there. I created my visual style by getting an idea and then learning the tools I needed to learn, and then just sort of just going for it, just trying to make it in an efficient way, in an effective way. And so a lot of the things that people would know or about the way my stuff looks or the way it's sort of characterized is kind of economical. Like, I try and find the simplest way of showing something, and it's not like ultra minimalist. It's not obsessively minimal, but I have always tried to find a way of working that I find enjoyable and kind of simple, and that to me is like a kind of optimum level of like kind of fun to do and also gets the idea across. And so it's a combination. It's just sort of a style that emerges out of a method and a way of working, and that's sort of how it emerges. And it changes also each project a little bit as I learn more and get better at different things. I get my inspiration now a lot from the internet. I think everybody does. Also, you know, and above all, just from observation of life and of my own thoughts about life and what's going on. And that's always that's something that is sort of easier to, it's more difficult to kind of categorize, but everybody goes through life and has feelings and thoughts, and so that's a huge component of particularly my work in the last like few years. The process of making things is always different, and probably because I'm mostly working alone or in very small teams, I need to keep it interesting. And so as you're trying to do new ideas, you're also thinking about new processes and new things you can change to try and enjoy the process of making something more, because the process really affects the project. I think you can feel when something is kind of forced or done for somebody else, it's not as interesting as if you really loved the thing that you were making and that you put a lot into it. And people really feel those things.
Isn't this a bad influence?
Don't worry, it's just animation. It has no real effect on people.
So there's a huge amount of things that have influenced me over the years. It's like hundreds and thousands of things. I definitely had big moments where I was stunned by like a piece of art. In the beginning, probably I was interested in drawing, so Egon Schiele was a big person for me. I thought he had an incredible gift. Then I became obsessed with Michelangelo for a while, and then it, like a lot of classical art basically. And I wasn't hugely interested in film until I discovered Andrei Tarkovsky and his films. And so when I first watched his works, it made me really want to make films. And there's been so many. The problem with talking about like listing influences is that if I mention 3, I'll forget like 20 that are even more important or more significant. And like people like in graphic novels, people like Chris Ware is somebody that I mention a bunch because I think he had a big impact on me as a teenager, like reading Acme Novelty Library, his sort of masterwork. Was like opened my eyes to what you could do with design and storytelling, and so it's like a never-ending list of things.
One of the first things which everybody should understand is that every creature in the universe that is in any way sensitive and in any manner of speaking conscious regards itself as a human being.
So it's called everything, but there's different sort of levels of meaning for the word everything. And it's dealing with, let's say, viewing the world in its sort of totality. And that's one way of looking at the world or looking at reality, is sort of this everything way. Seeing it in the way it's presented in the game. So that's one way of doing it. But there's also like a million other things that you can do with media. There's so many things that are possible, and so I think you always, it's always good to kind of work as if each project might be your last one, and it's always, I think, important to like be as ambitious as you can within whatever constraints that you have. And yes, the project is like sort of big and saying a lot of things that I wanted to say in a project for a while. But there's also so much more, and I'll just keep making things as long as I have the opportunity to.